morning, everyone. Nice to see you again. I think that was an exceptionally good way to start our day. Yesterday, of course, we focused really on more e-commerce issues. We talked about payments, authentication, social media trends, and many other things. Today, we're going to focus and drill down on regional issues so that you, as Mr. Tibbs said, don't assume limited knowledge about your company. By the same token, by being here and participating and listening to our regional experts, I think you will be able to go into these markets with that much more knowledge about the competition you may be facing. It's my pleasure to introduce Dale Wright. He's based in Budapest, Hungary, where he serves as a senior commercial officer at the U.S. Embassy. Dale just celebrated his 16th anniversary working for the commercial service. He's also served as a standards attaché in both Beijing and Mexico City. He spent 4 years as a commercial officer in Japan and began his commercial service career in Sacramento, California. His private sector experience includes 4 years as a senior copywriter at an ad agency in Tokyo, and he is in fact fluent in Japanese. Dale, it's a pleasure to see you after so many years.
Well, thanks very much, Eric, and good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's awake. We have a good panel of experts here today, e-commerce professionals from Europe that can help your company access the e-commerce space in that continent. But why Europe? First of all, I don't know if you all know, but only 1% of the 30 million American companies export. And of that 1%, 58% only export to one market, which is typically Canada, UK, Mexico. So Europe has 500 million consumers across 28 countries, eager for US products. So what better way to expand your exporting efforts than to tap this burgeoning market? And what better way to tap that market than through e-commerce? Sales through which were worth $415 billion in 2013 and poised to increase exponentially in the coming years. Just like Europe is striving to become a single market, the U.S. Commercial Service is also attempting to reorganize on the continent and offer one-stop shop for U.S. exporters. For instance, we have here today a number of our excellent specialists from around Europe, and I kind of like to give them a shout out now, if you all don't mind. So if you guys can stand up when I call your names. First of all, we have Isabella Rochia from Brussels. Isa, are you here? There you go. Hemming Bjorna from Norway. He's way over there in the back. Rosemary Faria from France. Jesus Garcia from Spain. Padraig O'Connor from Ireland. Matthias Kokerwitz from Germany. And Phil Hammerstein from the Netherlands. Phil's way in the back there. They are poised to answer your questions about participating in the European e-commerce market. And I also want to thank them for their efforts in recruiting a delegation of 20 folks from all around Europe to attend this conference. And these people can serve as your in-house experts, if you will, while you're here. So please feel free to talk to them. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our panel moderator, Mr. Ted Dean. Mr. Dean is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Services at the Department of Commerce, in charge of enhancing the competitiveness of the U.S. services industry, which constitutes 80% of our private sector economy. Ted has extensive international business experience, including running a consulting firm in China for over a decade. He was also a founder of Americans Promoting Study Abroad and chair of the American Chamber of Commerce in Beijing. Ted and I have known each other from our experience in Beijing. Mr. Dean holds a BA from Yale and an MBA from the University of Chicago. So please welcome Ted Dean, who will introduce our panel today. Thank you.
Well, it's a really great pleasure to be here and be here with such a fabulous panel. The experts you're going to hear from are all to my left, so I'm going to just take 1 or 2 minutes to sort of open as Dale mentioned, I lived overseas for quite a bit of time before joining the Department of Commerce. I was working there in the private sector as a consultant, helping companies go overseas. And so what really led me back to Washington, which is hometown for me, and led me into government at the Department of Commerce was the experience I had as a private sector consultant working with clients, but then seeing the help they were getting from the U.S. Embassy, seeing the help and support they were getting from the Department of Commerce. So I'd just like to sort of echo the shout out that Dale just gave for the team of commerce folks that you have in the room. As someone who is now in government, but previously for over a decade was sort of looking from the other side, looking in. You have, for the U.S. firms in the room, just a tremendous resource, a tremendous team of people. You've got folks in the room now from USIACs around the country who are all across the country available to help American companies who want to export more. You have an amazing team in embassies around the world whose sole focus is figuring out how to knock down barriers so that you can sell more products and then concretely help you find buyers and partners and things that can help you grow your business. And again, as somebody who's now sort of seen under the hood in my last few years in government, but before that has operated and looked at this from the private sector, really just unbelievably tremendous, dedicated people working on your behalf. So you're here in this room, so you probably found that already. But if you're not making use of resources that might be in a nearby USIAC, if you're not reaching out to our embassies when you go overseas, definitely do that. Find the people from the Commerce Department who are in this room and make sure you're plugged into the right places. We do a great job on behalf of U.S. companies. We don't always do a great job marketing our services, so use this opportunity when you've got all these people in the room to find us and find out what resources are available. This is somebody who did this kind of work in the private sector and is working overseas and trying to run a business. Opportunities like this to get in a room with companies that are thinking about expanding overseas is sort of the fun part of the job right now. So I'm really thrilled to be here and to be here with such a great group of panelists who can talk to us about opportunities here in Europe and opportunities in e-commerce. I am a firm believer that the moderator's job is not to steal airtime, but to pass airtime on. So I will keep bios and introductions very short. And my own comments very short, and hope to direct questions from the audience as they come up to the panelists as well. I have to say, as Dale mentioned, I lived in China for many years. I can help on the pronunciation of Chinese names. I cannot help on the pronunciation of European last names. So I'm going to go with first name basis on this panel, and please take no offense. But our first speaker, we're thrilled to have with us, Olaf is Market Information Director at DirectLink, which is the international arm of the Swedish-Danish National Postal Service. Great opportunity to help set the stage for us, so over to you.
Thank you very much, Ted. I'm definitely very happy to have the opportunity to be invited here and talk a little bit about opportunities, e-commerce opportunities on European markets. Together with my fellow plenary participants here. And for those of you who are really interested, my last name is pronounced Kjellgren. It's a ch word sound, which is kind of hard for English-speaking people, but I'm sure.
I'm glad I haven't tried it.
Okay, so just some brief words about the PostNord. I'm from PostNord. Which is the Swedish and Danish National Post, the equivalent of the USPS, really. When we are working outside our core market, which would be the Nordic region countries, we're working under the brand name of DirectLink. And we have operations in the UK, Germany, the US, and also the Asia-Pacific region. The study that we have been performing here for a couple of years on European e-commerce basically covers 12 different European markets, what we normally refer to as Western Europe. And it's based on interviews with 11,000 individuals between the ages of 15 to 79. And it shows that even if Europe is kind of, from an e-commerce perspective, is less fragmented today than it was a couple of years ago, we still see a lot of interesting differences when it comes to consumer behavior and consumer preferences. People want to pay for the purchases in different ways. They want to have their goods delivered in different ways. And they like to buy different product categories online. So this is, of course, why it is of vital importance to be very much on top of this kind of information when you are taking your business to Europe cross-border. And it's kind of sad to see companies fail in attempting to launch in new markets just simply because they have a lack of knowledge or they are not kind of hooking up with the right partner. So it doesn't have to be difficult to launch in European markets, but it's a very good idea to do it the right way from the start, because you don't get too many second chances.
Thank you all. That's a great scene setter for us. I should have said a few words about format. We're going to allow each of our presenters to speak for a few minutes up front. We're going to have some discussion up here, and then I will open it to the audience for questions. I'm going to keep with my first name basis, Torsten, and pass on to you, the Managing Director of Alvarez & Marshall in Munich. Many of you saw his keynote presentation yesterday. But we'd glad that you're able to participate in our panel here today as well, so please.
Well, yeah, as mentioned yesterday, thank you for having me back here again. It's, yes, you have to pick the right partners, and you have to think about what you want to do before you go to Europe or any other European or international market. But on the other hand side, we have just heard that an 18-year-old is starting his own online business, exporting merchandise to Asia. So at the end of the day, it is doable, and you have to think about, if you're a small company, do I have to do everything from the very beginning, or are there other options just to test water temperature on the market and do it in a very low flows way? And this shows you have to think about the brand, corporate, like later on tax strategy. If you're a small company, you don't need a tax strategy to go to Europe, and real estate, as long as you don't want to open stores, what might be meaningful at the end of the day, don't think about it. Of course, operations and later on store operations are topics, but there's so many partners out there with whom you can outsource those services before you build it in-house. And I think that's why many great companies are here who offer that service. So I think it's at most important to try it. Take a first step. Give it a chance, learn from it, adapt. I mean, that's the American spirit to do business.
Thank you. And now, Robert from Blackman Fashion and Lifestyle Logistics.
Fashion and lifestyle logistics. This is what we provide on behalf of many reputable US customers throughout Europe. Services for 3PL solutions, transportation, warehousing. Basically, the peace of mind and the backbone of the US organizations in Europe. Now, we have a new solution that we provide for our American customer base in addition to our European customer base. This is called Local Heroes. And we all have our local heroes. Texas have got the Longhorns, Dallas have got the Cowboys, and we provide tailor-made solutions from the Netherlands. Why the Netherlands? There are tax advantages, we'll go into that later, to be had for US companies, and also the central location within Europe, the reach of the population of the rest of Europe is very favorable for US brands. Why local heroes? It is quite the norm if you ship a package from the US to use great carriers of UPS, FedEx, DHL. We also use those carriages for our solutions. However, in Europe, and that's basically historical, cultural, we also have local companies, say in the individual countries, like for example PostNL in the Netherlands or UK Mail in the United Kingdom, that provide similar good solutions. Now e-commerce is all about a personal experience. Once you press that button on an order online, you wish to receive that package in a perfect condition, on time, in full, well presented. There are a lot of companies who can do it, but it's also about competitiveness within the market on pricing and service. To be able to do that, we have actually turned things around and said, okay, quite revolutionary, we give the customer the opportunity to make that choice. Now it may be that you want your package by 12 o'clock next day, can be done at a certain price. Or you say, well, I'm not really bothered, 3 days will do me. We all have a solution. So that is per country to offer the ultimate solution for our customer base, also for a US customer base. Another option that we provide within a Local Heroes is the omni-channel or the multi-channel solution. Why is this important? It provides a customer to reduce their buying stock and at the same time increase their margins. So you can either channel it to retail, wholesale or e-commerce, all from under one roof. So it is all about finding the right solutions for your product within the European market. Everybody will, and US companies here that wish to promote their product into Europe will have to do and investigate what are the best solutions for that. And as an organization, we can assist because Europe is a great platform also for US brands. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Robert. And now Jean-Paul is the Senior Manager of Supply Chain Solutions at Holland International Distribution Council. So over to you.
Thank you. Well, it's a great honor to be here. Say, like all the people, I'm really thrilled to see this big group of people, and I think it's a great opportunity to tell something about Europe, about the business we do. I already had a few discussions with some of the people, and we kind of said, they should do this more often. So that's already one point I want to make. Let me first shortly introduce the company or the organization I represent. I work for an organization from the Netherlands called Holland International Distribution Council. We're a private non-profit organization consisting of members, a membership-based organization, and it's over 300 companies. And what we all have in common is that we are active in trade and logistics in the Netherlands. And we're all trying to build on the brand Netherlands, the gateway to Europe. It's a brand, we're really good at it for a long time already. For centuries we've been the gateway, but there's a lot of competition from other countries, so we need to work hard to keep the position that we have. We're here with a small delegation of 9-10 companies from the Netherlands, ranging from bigger logistics service providers, but also smaller sized companies. And I think that's really a crucial thing. We have a good network, we know the industry, and we know where to feed in if we have questions, because that's what we do. We try to assist foreign, in my case, US companies to move into Europe. And it can be in any industry, it can be fashion logistics, it can be chemical logistics, but it can also be e-commerce. I'm based in Miami, so in that sense, I'm close by and I'm always here to help if companies have questions on European supply chain issues. What I really liked on the first 3 speakers is a few things that were really, exactly matching, I think, what we do. Do it right the first time. You only get one chance, And the second chance is going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be a waste of time. It's going to be a waste of investment. So doing it the right time, I think, is really important. In this sense, partnerships and networks are really important, because it helps. We deal with a lot of companies that want to move to Europe, and they start looking for logistics service providers via the internet. But then you end up with the large companies, and for a lot of companies, like a small niche player is a much more suitable partner. That's difficult to find. Outsourcing is another one that has been mentioned. Don't try to do everything yourself. Try to stick with your core business. That's developing a brand, making a product, and getting the sales organized. But things like logistics or VAT or whatever, try to outsource that and find the right partner on that. Location is also a crucial one, and that's also what Robert, I guess, mentioned. Where do you start? One of the things that was kind of striking to me is that I heard quite a lot of speakers in the previous days say, go to the UK because it's such an easy country to start. To be honest, that would not be my recommendation. It's an easy country to start, and you can, it's a big market, and you can make, potentially a lot of profit. But the UK is not the gateway to Europe. You can't do logistics out of the UK, specifically in e-commerce from the UK. It's too far. It's a single market. So if you want to, conquer Europe and be successful in Europe, my personal opinion is, you should go to mainland Europe. And that could be the Netherlands, it could also be Germany or Belgium. That would be the first 3 countries that I would recommend you to use as your gateway, as your hub. A few words on the slides. What's important in e-commerce? Lead times. Well, Robert said a few words on that. You need to be close to your market, and you need to have different options. Warehousing capacity. There's a few organizations that are here, both on logistics, but also from the municipalities in the Netherlands, where there's a lot of logistics activity. There's a lot of clustering going on, and a lot of companies are finding each other and getting together and take advantage of all the services that are close by, and to make it work. Skills. You need a lot of people, educated people, call center people, but also in the warehouse you need a special skilled staff to handle all the products that you're trying to sell. Crucial, of course, the inbound and the outbound with the Netherlands, with the main port of Rotterdam, but also Antwerp, very close by, and very often also used as a point of entry for the Dutch logistics industry. And finally, more on the services side and tax and VAT issues. The Netherlands is really having some special schemes on VAT and customs and duties that make the Netherlands quite a unique gateway and an easy point of access for the European market. I'm sure we're going to get into the different subjects during the later discussions. So please.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you all for really setting up a really interesting discussion for us. As I said, I'm going to begin with some questions for our panelists. I'm going to encourage them to agree, amplify, disagree, argue, whatever the conversation leads, but also encourage all of you to be thinking of questions to bring to the panel as well. Maybe we'll start with a slightly sort of bigger picture look as we begin to burn down and some of the practical areas that John Paul was beginning to take us into. But Torsten, I wonder if you could speak for the U.S. companies in the room here as they think about Europe and the differences in retail between Europe and the U.S. and how that may impact how they should think about e-commerce and beginning businesses there.
Basically, in Europe, you have a different landscape. You have local players, meaning the big players in the countries, like in Belgium, the biggest department store chain is Galeria Eno. If you want to go to Belgium, there is no way around them, working with them. In Germany, you have different players, and the Netherlands, you have the Bijenkorf. And so you have to figure out who are the best fitting players with regard to your industry, to the merchandise that you are selling, and The second part is, in the beginning, you might think about selling direct from the US to Europe to avoid all the hassles concerning European regulations. They are there, I have to admit that. So if you have an import of records, then as mentioned yesterday, everything needs to get localized. The labels, you have to fulfill REACH regulations. In France, for example, you have to pay a recycling fee for each item that you're selling in the French market if you bring it into the French market. So this is pretty complicated, but if you do it direct in the beginning with the right partners, with the right logistics partners, it might not be enormous concerning the amount of sales you're going to generate, but it's a first step.
Yeah, and is that a way, as you said, with partners really to capture some learnings about the market, which then guide you where you really want to invest? Because one of, to your point about differences between member states and the EU, where there are those differences, if you're going to have to decide to make upfront investments, and the point of getting it right the first time, do you think that sort of use of e-commerce would allow you to sort of gather some learnings about the market that then allow you to plan when you really want to sort of go big where you should go?
Absolutely, you can gather a lot of learnings from web analytics on your own site, on selling to foreign markets, getting the customer feedback. So, and if you have the customer feedback even on your own site, that's a good thing about the internet. Your customers are telling you voluntarily what they think about the merchandise. They give you feedback in your shop or on Facebook. So all you have to do is listen, watch, and learn.
Please do.
And maybe I can mention something on this. I think, we're all talking about entrepreneurs, specifically, in the small and medium-sized companies. There's of course a thing on thinking opportunistic versus strategic. And I think that's a crucial thing, because a lot of companies, they think opportunistic. They meet somebody at a trade show, the guy from Italy or Spain or Poland, whatever. He sees a sales opportunity and he says, okay, that's going to be my point of entry. But if you're a real businessman, you should take a step back and take a strategic approach and say, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years' time? And then make an assessment and then make your decision. And that could be a different country than the country where you have your first opportunities. And in my business, all the time I meet companies that are in that process and that that's really what we just mentioned again. Do it right the first time.
Exactly, but if you start with e-com, you can wait until you take the second step, because you take a very opportunistic step. You're deciding to start international sales. And then you're thinking about which countries do you want to enter? What's the right country for you, and what might be the right partners? So it buys you time, and you can learn more about the market before you make that strategic decision.
Well, one of the resources is your survey data. What does the survey tell you about e-commerce and some of these assessments you might make about where there are growth opportunities, where to go in Europe?
Yeah, well, I would say that from a general way of speaking, Europeans are getting more and more at ease with online shopping, and online shopping in most of the European markets actually has reached stage of say maturity, and that would be in the positive sense of the word. And if you take the United Kingdom, for example, that John Paul was mentioning, in another sense, 16 to 17% of the total retail revenue actually comes from online shopping. Now, that's the highest number in the world today, as far as I know. But we also see other European markets are kind of quite fast moving into that direction. And if we talk about cross-border in particular tech, I would say that we are not longer afraid of buying products from foreign countries, because we know from own experience or from other people that it actually works. We will get the the goods that we ordered, and we will not be tricked. And it also provides, of course, which is a very important factor here, much wider range of product offered to us. So, and it's kind of interesting when you look at the development. When people were asked 5 years ago why they were shopping online, a majority said that because it's possible to find lower prices online than if you go to a bricks and mortar store. That is not the picture that we get today. Today people are saying that they shop online because it's convenient, it's easy, it saves time, and it provides a greater range of products that are offering to you. So yeah.
So, Robert, as you look at the range of brands that you work with, are you sort of applying one strategy across those segments? How do you think about a particular brand, a particular segment, and then how you grow their business in Europe?
Say from a US company point of view, normally the UK is the biggest market. Why is that? There's a language thing, and what we also see, so the main players in fashion and lifestyle, such as Abercrombie and Fitch or Tommy Hilfiger, their first and biggest market is the United Kingdom to sell their product. That's for retail, but also for B2C. The UK has always been a market where sort of that catches on first to what happens in America, and the rest of the mainland follows. However, from a logistics perspective or a transportation perspective, mainland Europe, and it could be either the Netherlands or Belgium or Germany, would be a very good basis for an American brand. And you see that as also the experience that we have with these brands. Those are the countries that they will use as their base. Now, specifically in the Netherlands, as also Jan-Paul rightly said, there are tax advantages to be had, the VAT deferment, etc. So it can create a cash flow problem, a cash flow advantage, for the American brands. So this is something that you would do very well to investigate prior to starting on your business. The experience that we have with American brands is that they are looking for the right partner to actually help their business grow. That means business grow from a sales and marketing perspective for the supplier, but also the backbone of a logistics and transportation operation within Europe. And that has to be flawless these days. Customer service is important. A failure of service is no longer acceptable.
This is partly from my past experience working as a consultant overseas. I think in particular for small and medium-sized businesses, really making an investment in international business can be daunting because of the upfront investment, because of the cost. And in some sense, I think companies look, those moments are sort of bet the company choices. I've got an okay market in the United States, I'm doing okay, I know my business is going to survive, and then I'm going to make a significant new, whether it's money or just time of management in expanding overseas. I think one of the things many in the room may, at least in their mind, to be thinking is about high cost of doing business in Europe. How do you think about cost issues, and what advice for companies who are considering, is this the right moment? How do they manage cost? How do they manage that challenge of international expansion?
When is the right moment? I don't know, when you're ready to do it. I think the real issue is not the cost side. The real issue is to manage your expectations concerning the sales side. Because over here, if you're lucky, you're a fashion brand and you're selling through Macy's, the biggest department stores over here, and Macy's is offering you 800 doors. Or you do a project with Walmart, and from what I've seen, the first test orders from Walmart are like 100,000 items. And then you go to Germany and you talk to Kaufhof, because department store in Germany, and they only have 100 doors. And you're able to have a test order, and this is going to be 1,000, maybe 1,500 items because they first try it like in like 6 or 7 of their stores. So I think the cost side is controllable. The sales side, we're talking about 800 million people living in Europe and a huge market, yes, but very fragmented. So even if you're able to work with the big players in Europe, be aware that the numbers might be much smaller than in the US. So I think you have to look for that learning curve, and after all, if you want to be really successful in Europe, you have to be aware that you have to cover the entire continent, all the different countries and places, and take this step by step.
Jean-Paul, how would you think about when companies are ready, or is there a, for clients you're working with, a moment when they've reached the scale that this makes sense, or how would you think about the right time for the folks in the audience to be thinking about coming to Europe?
Well, I fully agree with the point that you just made. Cost is manageable. I know a lot of companies, and some of them are here, like logistics companies, that work, that are really, the perfect fit for starters in Europe. If you would have 100 orders a week or 50 orders a week, they would be able to manage that, to give you the customer service, to give you the attention, to organize basically everything for you. It would be only, small volume. And for bigger companies, well, to scale up, that's not really an issue. But indeed, the sales is crucial. We have quite often we see that companies, they bring in some stock, and it's there, and there's no sales. And indeed, in that perspective, it's kind of a catch-21 situation, because sometimes you need to have the stock locally from a sales perspective. But on the other hand, if it stays in a warehouse and you're not able to sell it, then it's basically a lost case. So it comes together, but sales is indeed, in the end, driving the business.
And so
the small companies, if you want to start with relatively low risk and with relatively low investment, you can start. And the 50 orders a week or 100 orders a week, that is manageable, because so often I speak with companies and they say, we're too small. That's a bit too modest, I think, a lot of times.
And how would you think, practically speaking, from your experience with your company, companies in the room that are thinking about, well, I'm interested, I'm going to go there, I found some business, how do I build the fulfillment operation to deliver on those first orders or grow that opportunity?
I was discussing with a few people in our delegation, there should actually be like a plan, if we only speak on logistics, because the other topics have been discussed in different sessions. But I think if you're a startup in Europe for fulfillment operations, I think really a few things that you should really look at is, what's going to be my country, what's going to be the hub country. You need to have your CE marking and labeling and everything in place, but I won't go into that. One of the things I think is really a challenge for a lot of companies, that is finding making a short list of companies that you could approach, 3BLs that have a good fit. Well, that's actually where we come in, because we have the network and we have the knowledge. So I think that's one of the big advantages that the organization I represent has, that we're able to help you find the right partner. The thing that we see very often is that people are not aware or familiar with RFP or RFQ processes in logistics. So they don't know what to ask. So they ask, they approach a few logistics companies and they say, can you give me a rate for this? That's not going to work. You need to get it structured, and you need to make an RFP document, and you need to know what the cost components and everything are. That's also a thing where we do assist companies with. Because in the end, if you would ask 5 companies to give a quote, like, an open question, you'll have 5 completely different quotes, and then you're lost. That happens so often. Another thing that I see that really happens quite often is that people don't communicate. In the end, logistics is people business, so you need to build a relationship with the company. Don't communicate via email, but set up a Skype call. And a lot of companies in our network that are really, trying to push the customers into that direction, because you want to meet, either via the internet, But in the end, you should also move over to the Netherlands or to another country and have a one-on-one discussion. It's really important, and it's worth the investment.
I agree with that, totally. I think one of the aspects is also from a sales perspective for US brands, is, you generate a certain interest in specific countries. So your website has to be top-notch. You would also have to consider that in Europe there are many different cultures. Yeah? So in effect, every single country has got its own culture, but also its own language in most cases. So if you generate, it's easy of course to have the UK language on your website, but in addition, if your market is mainly Italy, for example, it would be very wise to also have the Italian language equivalent on your website. Little things, but these are important to consider to make your business successful.
We're on a sort of, I think what was probably to many in the audience who were really thinking about how to expand a sort of interesting, practical stream here. I'm interested in any of the panelists who have additional comments or along practical advice for companies building businesses, please. Any?
Yeah, and I still, because thanks for interviewing, but I had a few more points, so that's fine.
And I'm not sure while you're going, I think this is a really interesting sort of moment in our conversation. We got a few more topics we want to cover, but I don't want to, if there are audience questions now on these topics, please go ahead and raise your hand. I'll try to find you, I'll get you a mic, but we will come back to questions at the end, but I don't want to miss someone's idea before they forget, so please go ahead.
One other thing I think is really important is pricing, because the landscape is so different in Europe for final mile delivery, and people are not really aware of that. And what the point that Robert just made is really true. There are so many providers in Europe, all with their own solutions. And in the US, you're used to a flat rate for the whole country. In Europe, you can't even get a flat rate for France or for Germany. You already have different rates, and then for each other country, you have different rates. So people don't realize that sometimes they're already far in the process, and they ask quotations, and then they're kind of, oh, what is this? And the rates are relatively high, also to a certain extent. And then the total business model is turned around. But also it has, of course, big implications also for building the website and payments and everything. So it's quite a big thing. So I would really recommend companies, before they start in the early phase, just get some rates and already do a first calculation whether it's going to work or not. And then sometimes you would need to also specify rates. What Robert just said, if you would ask a company, a logistics company, can you give me a rate for delivery to France? Is it a express rate or a 3-day delivery rate? That difference is really big, and it can build your business or not. People are not aware of that. Another thing is VAT and customs issues. That's also a thing you should consider right at the start. At least get an understanding on what the topics are you would need to be aware of. And sometimes it's also only taken up late, and then they're kind of surprised and frustrated. I put so much effort in this, and now it turns out that the VAT and VAT deferment and customs is so difficult. I kind of give up. That's if you do it properly and from the start, it is manageable, and get the right advice and partners to help you with the process.
Torsten, any reactions or any?
Agree.
Okay. I guess part of what I'm thinking, listening, is, and I'm going to ask an overly simplistic question, but taking the direction you'd like to go, is to what extent, when companies begin to look at Europe, should they have a Europe strategy, really based on what you've all just been saying, or should they have a France strategy, a Germany strategy, or Italy strategy, or whatever it is, and then once they've done that, and once they've justified that business, then really think about a Europe strategy, because it sounds like, some of what you've been talking about, I know what you've been talking about is how to manage that complexity, which implies you think it can be managed, obviously, but how would you, for a company that's just beginning, should they be thinking Europe-wide, or should the first project be figure out where they can go and then get that right, and then go further? Because obviously, Germany's a huge market opportunity, Italy's a huge market opportunity. You know, they're big markets where you wouldn't have quite all the complexities that you've just been talking about. I don't know any reactions from the panel.
I think that, say, certain countries are sort of, even in Europe, leading where it comes to e-commerce. I mentioned the UK before, so the percentage of e-commerce there is bigger than in the rest of Europe. So other countries are sort of following up on that. I think it's important to establish where you want to be. There are a number of countries traditionally like UK, Benelux, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, are normally where you can create your volume and do your business. The other countries, with all due respect, the volumes are normally less, that you can create in those countries. So I think it's important from a sales perspective to establish where you want to be and get the right advice, but also the central location in Europe from where to distribute your product is vital.
I think that the study that Olaf has with him is in that sense really instrumental because it really gives, it shows the differences between the countries. So I think it's, and there's more similar studies, of course, on the market, or you can find them on the web. But I think that's, information that's easy, accessible, and could be helpful.
Any questions? I haven't been looking at the audience. We have one here, and I'm going to come back to the panel. I want to talk about consumers in Europe, but we've got a question I'd love to take.
Good morning. I'm a Brit from London, so I couldn't really let that pass. So interesting comment. We're always impressed by the consumers. We often ask how do they punch so far above their weight, but we'll have a debate on that another day. The UK imports about 47 billion from the US in terms of goods annually. And so that is a lot, but the really interesting number is it's about 65 billion in services. And so when you add services and goods, the UK is the largest single market for US products and services. Where does the panel think that services is going to go? Because the future of e-commerce services is actually the big, exciting future that we see today.
Well, I'm thrilled that you asked the question because actually my job in the Department of Commerce is to focus on services industries, and so often when we think about exports, we think about what moves in a container when actually the logistics itself is an exportable service, and and in all sorts of other areas. But reactions from the panel about services exports and opportunities in services.
I think services are vital for your business. It's the backbone for your business to be successful. And the location is vital, depending on also where your market share is. And to get the most benefit out of, let's say, your own business towards your customer base.
Well, actually talking about services, in my opinion, this is far more complicated because of the language barriers. So if you want to offer the same service in a European country, it's imperative that you place your offer in the local language. So there's a big exchange between the UK and the US, I don't know why. But for example, if you take a look at a company like Google, for example, the first country they entered in Europe was the UK. Then they went to Germany and they were aware that they had to build up a fully fledged German site. It took them about 15 years to go to Spain and start a localized Spanish site because they still believed that this market was too small for them. Until nowadays they don't have their own Austrian site or Swiss site. So if we're talking about services, you really have to dig into the market really deep.
I like that answer. Just to pick up on Google. Google has a market share across Europe higher than here in the US. They've just been so much more successful. You look at it, they're 90 to 95% in most European markets.
Absolutely, but back in Europe we don't have Bing, for example. Yahoo missed the bandwagon, and actually Europe has an independent search site that's coming from Russia, Yandex. In the Russian market, for example, Yandex has like a 60% market share and Google a 30% market share. So what Google did in a very good and smart way is they took the opportunity that there was a vacuum for search. and they filled it. And right now, Google in Europe, Western Europe, is the synonym for search. They are the dominant 800-pound gorilla, but you have to be aware that all the publishers don't like Google back in Europe because it's a monopoly. It's great for the users, it's great for the customers, but it has reached a form of dominance where your business partners are not very happy with it.
And there's probably 2 or 3 panels of discussion we can have on that topic. For everyone in the audience, I know there are a couple more questions, but I did, Olaf's research is so relevant to so many different segments that there are probably folks in the audience covering. I have questions ready, but what I'll do is hand over to you and tell me what you think would be most useful, relevant for our audience.
Yeah, well, I think it's quite interesting to know what kind of products, actually, product categories that Europeans are most keen buying online. And according to the studies that we've been performing now for a couple of years, it is quite a clear picture. The absolute number one commodity for Europeans to buy online is fashion, clothing, it's footwear. And if we look at this particular study, that's the top commodity in all markets, with one exception, which is Italy, actually, which is kind of interesting. After that, we have home electronics. Then we have books and other physical media products. And we also see some other interesting product categories coming up as very strong runner-ups. Cosmetics, it's been growing now for a couple of years. We have toys, we have children's clothing, sport, leisure articles, and actually also in the recent year, furnitures.
What about from a cross-border perspective, either within Europe, but also effectively imported from outside of Europe? How does that debate play out?
Yeah, it's about the same. It's what we buy from other countries are, again, clothing, especially in Northern Europe and the Nordics, buying home electronics, cosmetics, and again, no big difference really what you're buying domestically or what you're choosing to buy from other countries.
Does the survey speak to what are some of the particular challenges, and you talked a little bit about this before, sort of whether it's consumer expectation or consumer fears of a cross-border purchase, and you talked about how that's moved already quite a bit, but are there still challenges, and are there ways that folks in the audience can plan their businesses to address those challenges or those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, of course there are challenges, and as I said, the development making people feel more comfortable buying cross-border has been, really amazing the last years. But there are issues. There are generational issues. If you're a bit older and not, belonging to not a digital native, you may have, initial problems with buying from sites in other languages. You can have problems with, you can be wary of maybe there are additional fees, hidden costs, things like that. But as we're getting along, and I would say that won't take too much time until we are in our global community where we have no problems.
Do you think within Europe that's just a time span of familiarity where with time and with more experience it's easier, or does it also reflect, genuine differences in rules about returning goods or VAT complexity or other things that are also can change over time, and governments are in fact, European Commission is looking at how do you create a digital single market, so there's an effort to take down some of those barriers as well. But those are sort of more concrete barriers that need to be taken down, whereas the other issue is more just consumer perception changing over time.
Talking about a single market is something that we are, all of us who are into e-commerce are dreaming of that moment, but when that will come true. So before we're there, yes, we will have issues concerning VATs and other, kind of trade thresholds that we face.
Reactions from other panelists?
Yeah, I think one reason why cross-border in Europe is as common is because Amazon and eBay blowed the way. In Germany, for instance, for many years, the biggest retailer in e-com was Amazon.com. So German customers placed orders in the US. It wasn't very comfortable, as I mentioned, because you had to go to your local custom authorities, pick the merchandise up and pay in cash. They found the merchandise that they were not able to find on German websites. Then Amazon.com was surpassed by Amazon.de after they found it very quickly. So, and on eBay, you're used to buy something in Germany from a retailer or an individual who has placed the offer in Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, or wherever. So I think we are more used to cross-border commerce in the European market than you are over here in the United States.
What I think is that's the thing, then the transportation comes into the picture again. Of course, products are different, I think. If you look at small, lightweight items like fashion or cosmetics or small electronics, there, from transportation side, it's quite easy to manage. I'm at the moment, well, you mentioned furniture, or I'm at the moment involved with a project for bikes or complete play yards, and then, cross-border is a different perspective because cost and transportation cost and final mile delivery, cross-border is getting really difficult. So I think products, different segments are more, fit for cross-border than others.
I think another important part is the returns, because traditionally for e-commerce, the actual percentage of returns is higher than a normal B2B business. So it's very important also for us to provide the right solutions that includes track and trace, but also the speed when a return shipment is done and the way it is processed in close cooperation with the customer. So these are vital parts of it.
I think we had a question back here, which I didn't come to.
Yes, I have a question about pricing, and I do work with VAT every day, but this is still not straight to me. And in standard in the US is that when you state prices, it's always net sale tax, B2C and B2B. But in Europe, the standard is that when you state prices, it's always include VAT when you state to B2C. But when you state B2B, it is net VAT. So then my question is, for the US company that's selling in, this is an issue. It's a legal issue, and also it is a marketing issue, I think. So first question is, do you guys know if it is legally required to state prices when you sell B2C in Europe, including VAT, or is it just a business standard? And my other question, your opinion about that, I think it's also a smart thing to include VAT, because private people in Europe get mad if they check out and they realize they have to add on VAT at that point, about 20%, which the American customer is used to. We go and shop and we know when we check out that we have to pay the sales tax. But the European do not know that. The customer in Europe expect the price to include the 20% VAT. So those are my questions. Is it legally required? And is it a smart thing to do?
I'm so glad to have your question, because it's a sign we've got exactly the right kind of person in the audience asking practical questions because they're doing business in the market. So reactions or interested? Sure.
I wouldn't know if it's legally required, to be honest, but it is really...
If you do your business within Europe, so you're European-based, it's legally required. If you're selling from the US to Europe, it is not, and it's even a little bit more complex. If the value of the merchandise is beyond 25 euros, it's VAT free, so there won't be any VAT charged. Up to 140 euros, it's even customs free. So, and I mentioned it yesterday, players like Waterfree, Pimdemos, Borderlinks, what they do is, and they do that in the checkout process of the shopping basket, they take a look at your article numbers, match it with a master data management file and custom tariffs, and then they add the VAT and the taxes accordingly, what is very convenient for the customer. So only in this way you are able to receive the order back home. But a European customer would not expect, if he's shopping on a US site, to get it shown when he's browsing your shop, only in the checkout process. And as long as you're selling from the US, legally you don't have to do that, only in the checkout process.
Yeah, I get that. However, if you have opened up a European site, you are still selling from the US and you open up a site for Germany, for example.
Yes.
Then it is again becomes a legal and a practical issue, right? And also again, you are shipping in products, as you say, they have, you can have a warehouse then in Europe, right? So you're an American company, but you sell from a warehouse in Europe. You put a warehouse there, and therefore you are registering and do charge VAT, right? So that's not necessarily always that you are a US selling in like that, because it really depends on.
If you have a warehouse in Europe, it's a different ballgame, because then you have an importer of records and you have brought the merchandise to Europe, and from there on, yes, you have to show VAT accordingly to all the different countries.
Yeah, I know, but then you have to really think this through when you sell on your website in the US. It's like, do I have open up a German website in Germany for the German customers, right, that they shop from? And where does my product come from? It's very complex, I think, to figure out how do you do that. You really have to think it through. You know, where does my product come from, and where does the customer see where they shop from? Because they are maybe in Germany and they are, you open up a German website but you're still shipping from the United States. And then they think they are buying, they don't necessarily always know where the goods come from. So it's a tricky question to how to do that.
But that doesn't matter. Take a look, for example, at Gap. They are not doing so well concerning their brick and mortar business in Europe, except for the UK and in France. They have left Germany again, but they have a really decent online business, and they are doing that online business out of the UK. And they even have a German version, and they tell the customers you are shopping at Gap outside, and you get the merchandise delivered from our UK warehouse. The site is in German, VAT is shown, so it's like, it doesn't matter where you have the merchandise located. I'm currently in interims MD for a European fashion brand, and we are serving 9 different markets within Europe out of one warehouse. All we have to do is, concerning the markets, if we are shipping to Belgium, for example, or Spain or Germany, we have to show the different VAT numbers. Yes.
But what's related to this is the thresholds that they're in place for countries. So if you're a small company and you set up in Europe, and this is European legislation, because, well, the thing that we didn't get into yet is the difference between different countries on duties and VAT, but that's a different issue. But suppose you're a small company and you set up your warehouse in any country in Europe, and your sales to another country is below a specific threshold, then you're considered to be a local company, and you can also use the local VAT rate. That is in general, for most bigger or more important countries, that is around 100,000 euros. In the UK it's 100,000 pounds, so that's a bit more. In other countries it is like 35,000 euros. You know, for a real startup company that can be decent amounts, but the moment your company is a bit bigger, of course, then you would easily surpass those amounts. And the moment you exceed this, well, suppose 100,000 euros for Germany, then you would need to register locally. You would need to register for tax for VAT purposes, and you wouldn't need to register your company. So that's a different thing. And don't get frightened on that side. It's a relatively easy thing to register for tax for VAT purposes. But you know, the moment you exceed the threshold, yeah, that's a different ballgame indeed, and you need to set it up.
So the good news is, I think the good news is on this. we've got a few more topics we want to cover, and the good news is you've got a panel here whose business in many ways is helping with companies that are doing what it sounds like you're doing. If you have a quick follow-up question, but I do want to move on to some other topics. So.
No, I think it's just like if you are selling from European warehouse, you should state the prices, including VAT, to the European market. That's probably what you do.
Yeah.
We got consensus in the end. This actually is a great question, a very practical question. I wondered if I could just maybe go down our panel, because just this one question sort of surfaced something that folks might not have considered. If you had sort of one thing we haven't talked about yet that a company that's beginning to think about Europe expansion, e-commerce market expansion ought to be, asking experts like we have on our panel, asking the experts we have in the embassies in Europe, what's something that might not be on their radar screen. This was not a prearranged question, so feel free to pass. But is there something we haven't talked about that similar to the question that just came up, which would give people another practical idea that they really need to have in mind and to make sure they've done their homework on before coming to Europe? What would any reactions?
Possibly considering a legal entity in Europe. So eventually you get you have the benefit of the tax and VAT deferred.
Yeah, well, one thing that I would like to add on that one actually is that, for a lot of people, they're confused whether they need to set up a legal entity or not. If you would only speak on logistics, to get your products into a warehouse and move them to your customer, it is not a necessity to have a legal entity. And there's a lot of confusion on that as well. But of course, you could have other motives, to set up a legal entity. But from a logistics perspective, you can sell anything within Europe without having any legal presence.
Other thoughts or reactions? Other questions from the audience, please?
Can you hear me? I moved over so you could see me now because I was sitting on the
I'm sorry,
car.
I didn't look over there.
I just wanted to say, Bruno, thank you very much for your very intelligent, on-point questions. Here's my question. I hate to be in situations like most of us where we say, how come no one told us? Or, how come I didn't know? So if you could each briefly just mention a couple of points to make us all aware of things to avoid, or obvious mistakes that others have made, so we can avoid them.
You've all worked with a range of different partners and companies. Are there repeat mistakes that you see that companies make when they first come to Europe that you can help some of the folks in the audience avoid?
It's very operational. I wanted to talk about this. It's like sizing and fitting. There's myth, there is differences that don't matter, and there are differences that do matter. Myth is that the sizing over here and in Europe is completely different. That's not true. It's like in Spain, of course, we have more petites than in Holland or Germany, of course. But if you operate a marketplace, you're familiar that all of the brands, they have different sizings and fits, and besides you are running your own brand or your own private label business and you do this in a very disciplined way, all the size ranges vary. So you have to deal with that, but it's a global phenomenon, not a US, European related one. There are differences. For example, zippers. In outerwear, the zippers for women and men are on the opposite side in Europe. So I have
Never
to
knew that. That's a new.
it's true. It's we sit on a different side, men and women in Europe. And I've seen retailers, and they wanted to buy outerwear in the US, and they believed that back in China, where it was produced, take on orders, they have to change the side of the zipper. And I said, yeah, thank you. Plain nuts. I convinced them not to do that, and because people don't care on which side your zipper is. So the feedback on their webshop was, oh, great merchandise, great value for money. Nobody cared. Nobody mentioned or posted, oh, guess what? The zipper's on the wrong side. Talking about dresses, it's slightly different. The average size over here in the States is a 14, same in Germany. And we also did tag out with dresses. Again, feedback from the customers, they really liked it, they liked the quality. But we do have a problem concerning the fit, and that's up here. So nowhere else. So I went back to my father-in-law, who is a genealogist, and said, Helmut, could you please help me? We have a fitting issue with the dresses. American women different from German women due to your knowledge? And he said, not by nature. But as you might, seriously, but as you might know, there's a huge industry in cosmetic surgery. And he shared with me the numbers of cosmetic surgeries in the US, and I can tell you that the fashion industry over here has adapted to that. And that's, for example, a difference I would never have dreamt about.
The two defining zippers and cosmetic surgery trends. I didn't know we would go to that in this paper. Are there other thoughts or things that the audience should know as they plan their operations? And actually, I have to say to one of our timekeepers from the Department of Commerce, I don't know quite how much time I have left.
5.
Okay, great. Well, then why don't we do this? Well, I'll look at any other questions from the audience, and then we didn't get through all the questions we prearranged, so I'll just give each speaker a couple minutes to cover anything that they didn't get a chance to say. But any other questions from the audience? Or? I'll make sure I look over here this time. Great, well, I'll just turn to each of our panelists, and I won't go in a set sequence, so I'll give you whoever needs more time can have more time to go last. But any last comments, since we didn't get through quite all of our questions that we discussed with you?
I think there's plenty of examples of successful US companies who have already come into Europe. So I think it's a great market, it's a great opportunity. I think if you have the intention to do so, go for it, because there is sufficient skill, knowledge available to help you through that process.
I think that's something that we have not had time to cover really is what US e-tailers should bear in mind when trying to enter Europe. And I would say that local is the kind of key word. Try to be as local as possible, or kind of try to be as local as you can afford to be really, and really try to get in research when it comes to your main target groups, when it comes to your potential competitors in the markets which you are entering. And also I think it's an important question about translating your website. It's always a big advantage to have your website translated, but it kind of depends on what is your target group in terms of kind of educational level, income levels, and things like that. But being as local as possible are kind of creating trust for potential buyers in Europe.
Great point.
One remark from my side. I think I'll get back to one of the very first points I made, and that is find the right partners. That's really important, and in that sense I would like to refer, that we're here with a group of companies. So I really recommend you to take advantage of that. If you have any questions on operational side or on location, we have a small group on the other side of the main exit here. And there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge from the Netherlands, so please reach out to them and ask questions and make use of this opportunity to meet with people who are in the industry.
Well, kind words from my side. This is a great event. I'm completely astonished by it, and I think that's the 10th event concerning the global market. So my advice would be there's so much knowledge on the government side here, also local knowledge from the market. So reach out to these professionals, talk to them, and ask them for help, because I think they can really give you good advice concerning these markets and also in finding the right partners. So thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you, and especially for the not prearranged plug for the Department of Commerce. It's something I wanted to share at the end, sort of finish where I started. Some of what we talked about was overcoming the complexity of operating here. There's complexity in any market overseas, any new challenge. I don't want to overstate that. But to the extent that's one of the things you're thinking about, there is a really great resource in the Department of Commerce. You've got people in every single country in the European Union. They don't in any way replace the expertise that is on stage with our panelists here or others in the private sector. But when you're making those first assessments about where to go, first questions you need to ask, and beginning to look at partnerships, they can help point you in the right direction. And I think if I could take a tiny bit of credit for the Department of Commerce for putting on such a great panel, just as the Department of Commerce folks found this great group to come here and speak with you today, they can go out and help you find great partners that will help you build your businesses in Europe. But I'm just really grateful because I think this has been a great discussion, and we've covered at a very high altitude some of the big trends, but also some really practical issues that companies face when they go overseas. And I would, as was just said, we've got their booths out there, find these companies, talk to these expertise. What a great opportunity right here for the folks in the audience to be able to talk to people directly who are helping companies do business in Europe. So please just join me in thanking our panel for a great conversation.